Thanks. Great to be here. Much appreciated the opportunity. So thanks, Michael, for having me here. And it's good to come back and talk about a project which I spent 3 years working on, which was the Caulfield to Dandenong project, which is affectionately known as SkyRail. So I'll be talking about the complexities involved in delivering this project and some of the challenges that we face and also the benefits to the community. So without further ado, there's a video to start and I'll kick this off. There we go.
Authorised by...
It's crammed 3 years of work into a minute and a half. It makes it look pretty simple, but it was a little bit more complex than that. But over the scope of works, which you can see here, the 9 level crossings that were engaged to be removed was the biggest project undertaken for the State Government of Victoria. So you can see on the diagram here, there's 3 distinct zones. We've got the A, B, C, D, which is Zone 1, so that's through Carnegie, E and F, which is through Clayton, and Noble Park has G, H and I. So they're the 9 level crossings which we removed over the period of our project. We built 5 new stations, and we upgraded the rail systems network from the city all the way out to Cranbourne and Pakenham. So huge job, a couple of $1 billion in 2 years. But the key there is the benefit to the community in terms of the removal of the dangerous level crossings and creation of parks underneath. So we saw 22.5 hectares, so 11 MCGs as we coined the phrase on our project. And the upgrade in the signalling system work results in an increase in capacity on the network of 42%, which is huge. So this is a picture of the straddle carrier lifting in an entire span across the live rail network. So just a very quick snapshot of the complexity of the project that we had to navigate. Various challenges there, working the platforms that you can see down below, the blue parapets on the platforms delineate the project and show the proximity that we had to work within. So very tight corridor, lots of challenges, but some great things we worked through. So key things for us working through on the project, managing the spend was enormous. So have been on a project that turned over $160 million per month. So if you think about the scale of that, bring it back to per day spend of $5 million, and you have to drive that accountability and spend through the job to be able to hit the targets. So really important for us. Program up the top right-hand side there is a really, really crucial one for us. We're occupying the rail network, we're minimising disruption, we're looking at every avenue to shorten the critical path, including the straddle carrier, and look at the cycle times of that, which in the tender it was 2.5 days per span. That was reduced down to 1 day per span. So the benefit there is we're out there for less time in the community doing this work. So the narrow rail corridor this is something like I've never seen before in my time in civil engineering, the challenge of building 2 elevated viaducts at the back of people's houses in between a rail corridor and their back fences. Our selection of the option to go with an elevated structure as opposed to the usual solution selected for the state government's trenches resulted in connection of the communities on either side of the train line, which were previously bisected. So previously people on either side of the train line that never interacted with one another, all of a sudden now they're left with a shared path underneath an elevated structure where they can walk from one side of the old rail line to the other. This is a picture of our straddle carrier in operation here and being set up. We had a single point of entry for the site. This is at Murrumbina, where all of the segments were delivered, assembled, and then erected from there. So the benefit there for the community is really about limiting the impact on transport and disruption through all of the areas. So the transport corridor is extremely tight. This allowed us to deliver the segments to one location and manage the traffic in the area so that we could, again, minimise the impact to the community. Stating the obvious on a big project like this, managing the dollars is paramount so that we can all make a profit and keep our businesses sustainable. Forecasting on a big job like this it's an enormous challenge. So getting the skills into the people and training of your people is really important here. And again, driving accountability through the teams. This picture here is of the station canopy during construction under a rail occupation. So very complex design work, terrific work done by the consultants and construction team to deliver this. As I touched on, driving accountability through the job was enormous, and making sure that dealing with the scale of a job like this is something that people aren't always used to. So in Australia, these jobs only come around very infrequently. So dealing with, as I said, a $5 million spend per day takes some adjusting and getting your head around that. So some people who aren't used to that really need that support and guidance to be able to be comfortable with that spend. And it might seem counterintuitive to make sure that you do spend, but if you don't spend the money in time, you're not going to achieve program and get out of there and finish the job on time. The last point there, sticking to the plan and managing change control it's so important on a big job like this where decision making is spread across a very large team. In order to make sure we understand what the implication of that change is that people are thinking about, you need to fully understand what the unintended consequences are so you don't make a change in one area of the job and then all of a sudden results in additional costs being incurred or delays being encountered elsewhere on the project. This is a picture of the elevated viaduct, partially constructed. You can see the straddle carrier on the right-hand side carrying a span. So essentially the construction phase here, you can see that we're lifting a span, driving along the top of the viaduct and then places the span into position. The straddle carrier drives along the viaduct back to Murrumbina, picks up another span, drives along and places the next span along. So imagine 6 kilometres of a viaduct being constructed. Underneath this viaduct, you can't see a live train line. So all of the considerations and on the outside of this viaduct on the left-hand side here, and the right-hand side, you've got people's houses. So the clearance involved in elevating this structure and placing it into position and making sure that it actually did fit was a key consideration for us and the community that we were working within. So we're out there 24/7. We're out there for 2 years lifting viaducts into position and spans, working through the night. So the engagement with the community was a key factor for us that we really needed to take control of at the start of the job. You may have heard the group called the Anti-Skyrail Group. They were quite prominent in the area and they required a lot of management and so did all of the rest of the community that weren't necessarily affiliated with that group. But I'm pleased to say that we're actually getting a lot of positivity from the community about our project, and people have realised that whilst the disruption at the time was there and it was probably painful for some of them, the benefit is now that they've got a viaduct which carries them into the city more efficiently and a parkland underneath at the back of their houses. The other key things to note here is the selection of the viaduct option here was the only real one that we actually were able to do, and that we arrived at after a number of iterations to get to this solution, to be able to physically fit a viaduct which could carry a fully loaded train on these lines. So each one of these viaducts carries a single line in each direction. So we had to carry the freight train or cater for the loads on the freight train here. So pretty complex stuff, but a great solution which the team delivered. So the other key point here was the engagement with the rail operators and the regulators. To work over on an operating rail line is very sensitive for people that aren't used to construction activities happening adjacent to their assets. So engaging with them and working with them really closely to demonstrate that we will actually deliver this without impacting their asset was really important, particularly for MTM, whose operations obviously have financial implications if they don't meet those targets. So disruption. So coming in and building these viaducts whilst minimising the disruption, working directly adjacent to the transport corridor was crucial. However, the times when we connected the elevated structures back into the train lines at grade, we needed to take out rail occupation. So set periods of time where we had to bus the community members that were used to catching the train at all of the stations that we've talked about there. We had to have buses running through the community and picking people up and taking them to their destination whilst we were operating and connecting the train lines back at grade. So you can see 5.5 million busing passengers were transported around the site and during our construction phase. Again, the key driver here is making sure that we committed to the timeframes that we did at the start of the occupations and making sure that they were planned effectively so that we could hand back the rail line critically on Monday morning before that first service. The last thing we would want to do, or wanted to do at all, was delay passengers because, one, there were penalties, but also that the feedback and the negative publicity to LXRA and the project was significant if we did that. So one of the other key things working in an area where you're building elevated viaducts in a community is media presence. And in the age of social media, now Twitter, YouTube, Facebook groups were set up. We had to be pretty resilient in terms of managing the negative press that did come, and also conscious that our team members understood the importance of behaving properly in a community. So really important messages to relay to our team that you're always under the watch of the community. So, correct behaviour, making sure that we are respectful of people, not parking across their driveways in a highly sensitive area, so particularly the Carnegie area. So good lessons for people to actually take on board in building infrastructure within a very tightly contained urban environment. So the managing the community point, it was paramount at the start where there was negative publicity about the project, and the engagement throughout the duration of the job and making sure people were aware of what was going on was crucial. And I was part of committees where we would engage Monash University, the local councils, and just keep them up to speed with what was happening on the project so that there were no surprises for them. If we had night works, so that we would occasionally move people out of their houses if they were upset or unhappy about that. So these are all the things that help turn the tide of negative publicity within the community to becoming a really positive outcome in the project. So this is a finished product here. I can touch on the insights, but it's probably more important to look at the pictures and see what the legacy that we've left behind is here. So connected communities on either side, we've got shared paths running through, activity nodes where the community can gather and play basketball, table tennis, and there's gym equipment dotted all throughout the alignment, the 12 kilometres of shared path that we constructed. So really great legacy to leave behind. I live about 1 kilometre away from Carnegie here, and happy to say that I use the bike path with my 2 boys and my wife riding along, and it's great. It's really rewarding as an engineer. This is what we do. It's we make a difference to the community and we actually add value. So it's something we can all be proud of when we have our little part to play in these infrastructure projects. So And again, so we've removed 9 dangerous level crossings. That's our premier, obviously being part of the removal ceremony there. 9 level crossings gone, so we're saving lives there, which is the most important thing. Getting people to and from the city more efficiently on more trains. 11 MCGs of open space created and bringing communities together. So really proud to be part of the project and thankful to be able to share with you for tonight's presentation. So that's a finished product of one of the station canopies in Murrumbeena. So thank you very much, everyone.